Okay, great. So we'll call the meeting to order. And Brittany, can you verify that we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum present. Thank you.
Okay, so does anybody have any items that are not on the posted agenda?
Different than a general announcement or other down at the bottom of the agenda?
I think so. I think these are matters subsequent to posting the agenda.
No.
Okay. Great. So then we're off to item 4, which is public comment on anything that a member of the public may address the board concerning something that is not on the agenda.
And just as a reminder, anybody on the Zoom link can raise their hand using that feature. And then if there is anybody in any of the public locations, if we could just have that board member raise their hand, and then that process will go for the rest of the meeting.
I don't think we have anybody. Are you seeing anyone, Brittany? Not seeing anyone over there. Okay. So we will move on to the consent agenda. So first we'll go to public comment on the consent agenda. So if any of the attendees want to raise their hands. Not seeing any. Okay, so we'll go back to the board. If there's any questions or discussion on any of the items on the consent agenda, we can take that now.
I'll move we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, Barb.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second, and then I think Barb has her hand up. Did you have a question?
I do. Thank you, Lori. I just had a question about the audit. I'm just trying to get my copy of the agenda. What is that item 5C?
Right.
I just was curious about how we will, I know we have to reflect revenues that were received earlier than anticipated because we received them. So we have to recognize those revenues. I'm wondering how the picture will look then next year. Those revenues were recognized early. Just kind of curious, Alex, how that, if you've discussed it all with the auditors, how that plays out. I'm imagining it's going to look like we are behind because those revenues came in early, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Great question. And of course, I disclaim I am not an accountant. So, take all this with the asterisks. I have met with our accountant who's been running point. That's Michael Maher. And he's been interfacing with Pacenti and Baker on this to get through the audit. Thanks to Director Cyphers, who's helped as our treasurer to, provide some input into that process. My understanding is through accounting rules here, Barb, and accrual accounting, the way they track it is it's if the payments come in as a cash payment, the revenue gets recognized appropriately and it'll sit within the income statement in a particular time period. So even if people pay early, they can tag that revenue as accruing to a later time. Otherwise, it'll be categorized as prepaid revenues, I believe. So they have a way of kind of time stamping it so that they make sure everything's apples to apples. And if I may, on this note, going forward, many of you will start to get 2 invoices. In a sense, you'll get the annual dues G&A invoice from the budget you've approved. And then you'll also be getting an invoice that helps fund your balancing account. And once you have money in your balancing account, we'll be constantly adjusting that based on cash in, cash out through a somewhat complicated accounting mechanism to make sure your balancing account is always trued up. That is a process we're still setting up, but we're going to get done this year in advance of the first project coming online next year. Does that help? And otherwise, I can happily follow up with the accounting team.
No, that's helpful. Thank you, Alex.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on the consent agenda? Not hearing any, and we do have a first and a second, so I think we can call the vote.
Perfect. Okay, so for the consent agenda, Central Coast Community Energy is absent. Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy is absent. Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yeah.
Thank you. The consent agenda passes.
Okay, great. So we're on to the regular agenda, and I see Garish, you're with us now. So if you don't want to pass, okay, I'll keep going. All right. So the first item on the regular agenda is the general manager's report. So Alex, I will pass it to you.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. Good to have the board here and appreciate you guys dialing in and making time for CC Power Business today. There's a couple things I'll talk with you about here. One is there's been a lot of work going on that you may not have had visibility to, but fundamentally what we've been doing is building up structures so CC Power can provide value. A good example is you may say, we think CC Power should do an offshore wind RFI. A question for me in my role is, do we have a structure in place to execute that efficiently so that your staff can participate, so that everybody's looped in properly? So we've been doing a fair bit of work to set up these structures, which ultimately will be the machinery we lean on to get the work done. I think this is very valuable work, and it's also involving some norming work with your staff. Although you guys are the board of directors, I would say in some ways the main clients I work with in this role would be your procurement teams, right? Those are the ones I work most closely with day to day. And so working in collaboration with them to make sure that CC Power is a smooth machine for them to lean on or use however they see fit is part of the challenge. So let me, if it's okay, Amy, we can put that slide up and I'll walk through some of the operating structures and work plans, and I welcome discussion as we go. Thanks. So next slide. Yeah, next slide. So as you guys recall, we've approved a budget, we had a strategic plan, and a lot of what we're doing now is really just executing on that. In order to pursue the strategic plan and get input from your folks and have the right level of visibilities and control, we're setting up a bunch of operating structures. Once we get to the next slide, you'll see a lot of this work is now somewhat established. And so a lot of that setup work is kind of gradually settling in and we're going to be moving forward. But a few core operating structures I wanted to make sure everybody understood are obviously the board meetings. And then we now have, or are in the process of having, 3 working groups. These working groups help collect input and liaison with staff from your organizations wherever appropriate. And these working groups also are designed and made up to target areas where we think there's value for you. So the first and probably most important one is the resource planning working group. This is where we work with your staff to develop a pipeline of deal flow that they may be interested in. This is where the offshore wind RFI would sit. This is where an Inflation Reduction Act strategic assessment and possible RFO would sit. There's also, and again, the working groups are open to all members. So even if you haven't signed on to a deal, your staff are eligible to participate in the working groups so that they always have visibility to what's happening and what possible deals or services could be available for your group to opt into. The shared services is another one. This is where we look to pool our activities. There's a lot of similar work going on. And so through the shared services, we may be able to find roles for CC Power to help multiple members with a single service offering. And then lastly is the customer programs and bulk buy. So if many of you have your own relationships with your customers and different programs you may want to offer, and this working group would be an area to explore the synergies through joint action on that domain of customer programs and bulk buy. Once a project is established, as you know, it kicks into a different category of funding and accounting and tracking and participation. Since CC Power has executed on those 4 contracts, there are but we've grouped them into Firm Clean Resources and LDS. We now have the Project Advisory Subcommittee. So I just want to be clear, when we say Project Advisory Subcommittee, that's really for the entities that have signed on to the deal and then are participating and have sort of designated participants to monitor and ensure we're doing the work to execute and get the deal up and running. We may occasionally set up other ad hoc committees, as you guys know. And then lastly, we're setting up file sharing for your staff through a member portal so that the members can access materials as appropriate, probably based on these groupings. For instance, working groups are available to all, but project advisory subcommittees are only available to those in the deal. So we're setting up a sort of interface structure for your staff so that they can always access these materials, or of course, just email me. Amy, next slide, please. And again, leaning on this working group model and also building off of the experiences from SCAPA and NCPA, we know that having good liaisons with the CCAs who are involved is really helpful. And so the structure inside each one of these working groups is we have a chair and a vice chair. They help set agendas, flag issues, et cetera. Generally, it's still a low lift of work, but it's good to have experts who can serve to advise and set direction for some of the working groups. On the resource planning working group, to give you a feel for the strong, talented people we have in these leadership roles is Monica Padilla from Silicon Valley and Jean Soleil from San Jose. The focus areas, I broke this into two groups. One is these recurring interest areas. Many of you may have MTR, incremental capacity needs. We may lean on exploring additional solicitations for areas we've already have experience with, like energy storage and geothermal. Or we may look at these new areas. And if you really know what we want to run an RFO for, we can do that. In some cases, we're not quite sure exactly when or what the RFO should solicit for. So we may need to strategically assess it. And those new interest areas are areas where we're looking at, I view like pretty promising, relevant things that might be a fit for CC Power and you. As you know, offshore wind, we'll talk about that later today. The Inflation Reduction Act, biomass and SB 1383 compliance, which is a compliance obligation you all have. We'll look at ownership readiness in case that's something we want to pursue, hydrogen and maybe others. And so that's the structure for resource planning. On shared services, I didn't really want to detail all the work we're doing there, but we are getting that set up with Michael Hyams from San Francisco as the chair and possibly San Jose in a vice chair role. So I'll get those teams mustered and then see who's willing to volunteer. And then lastly, we want to set up the customer programs in bulk buy. I think some good examples of scope for the customer programs in bulk buy would be program administration, and then also areas of bulk buy purchases like heat pump water heaters might be an area. And so we would try to learn from your members and your program teams about what might be valuable and what we could run through CC Power. So those are the working groups. And then the project advisory subcommittees on the next slide, just so you know, we've beefed up our program administration. As you know, CC Power has been leanly staffed. And so we've had a lot of different groups participating through sweat equity, which I appreciate. Over time, we gradually want to centralize that while still having the members and the right expert staff involved. And so the project advisory subcommittee structure does that. So these are now monthly meetings where the long duration storage project advisory group meets and talks through any issues and gets updated. And then likewise on the Firm Clean Resources. And then on the CC Power side, we're also sort of building our tools for tracking and oversight, and then also issuing compliance and reporting templates to help you. A good example of that is that many of you have integrated resource plan filings due, I think, August 1st. And some of your portfolio may include CC Power resources. So we need to help you know what to report on the CC Power resource. So we're stepping in to try and do that role usefully. And then lastly, we want to coordinate actions. So occasionally things come up related to the contracts, including for import write requests and things like that where a coordinated work plan is needed, and we'll make sure we get that done. And then lastly, I just wanted to emphasize, so that's kind of the structure we've been leaning into. And then on the last slide, the building activities. As I mentioned through Barb's question, there's some accounting and invoicing work that's getting set up. The machinery behind the balancing accounts is, it's very mathematical. It's not complicated, but it does need to work very cleanly and in a timely cycle. So we're getting that set up. And then we've brought on some resources to help us on contract administration. And then we are still looking eventually to hire, which is within budget, for the project management or manager role. And we've switched all the IT structures to a single platform now, which is helping avoid any IT issues. And then we're also meeting with external organizations, so people, I think, hopefully better understand the role and opportunities provided through CC Power. So those are some of the activities. So I wanted to just pause there and see if there are any questions, but perhaps most importantly, I wanted you as board members to have a sense of a lot of the work that has been underway. And I think this is Girish's words, going slow to go fast, getting the things set up so that we're really up and running efficiently. And I do feel like we're rounding the corner out of this kind of setup phase and really moving now into executing on the work, which I think will be very important. And we hope to do a lot of that.
Okay, so now we'll go to public comment on that item. Any member of the public can raise your hand. Not seeing any, so we'll go to discussion. Any questions or comments on item A? Grish.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate all the work you've done. I think we have an item on that we just got approved and consent for you to hire another person. So I think bringing on that staff member would be great. I know that all of us at CC Power over the last year, putting together the strategic plan and hiring a full-time general manager is literally to come to a place like this so we can start to move fast. So I appreciate you updating the board on all those activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Girish.
Any other discussion on this item? I will also share, I'm just very excited for these work groups and structures. I think this is going to enable us to make a lot of progress this year. So thanks for all the work on that. Barbara, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Lori, for recognizing me. Yes, I also wanted to just chime in on the support of what I'm hearing here, and also to share that I'm getting lots of positive feedback from staff on how things are going, Alex.
Good.
So I think you're hearing good things from the board, and I just wanted to say that that comes in part from good things, at least for me, that I'm hearing from my staff. The one question I would have for you is, in the summary that you just gave, where would you put the work that needs to be developed to support the Build It Right workshop? And are some of the stakeholders you're saying that you're speaking with about CC Power kind of in that lane?
That's a great question. So the Build It Right workshop, as you guys know, is an upcoming workshop that we're going to host likely in San Jose, pending Lori and I are going to coordinate this on venue. And that's September 30th, I believe. It's a Friday. Director Cyphers from Sonoma has offered to moderate and facilitate the workshop. So thank you, Jeff, for that. And the purpose of that workshop is to allow for a lot of listening and stakeholder input about how we, on behalf of you, can structure our work. And I think a lot of this does go to the procurement and building side, Barb, to do it right. So that work is kind of been set up. There is basically an event plan and a date. And now, and there's also a little budget for it too, by the way. So now we're going to go into the execution phase. I actually didn't talk about that because I feel like that's more execution work, not something we're setting up for the first time. Even though it is really one of the first events of CC Power, And frankly, I think a key audience for that group for that event is going to be labor. And we haven't yet developed our outreach plan, although I know many of you do have contacts with various labor groups, et cetera. And so there'll be a time pretty soon where we get our act together. And then I'd welcome everybody's input on making sure we have the right folks in the room for that event. Barb, anything direction you want to provide to me on this, which is more than helpful and appreciated?
Sure. I am not looking to give you direction at this point. I'm looking to lend support for a
Okay.
successful engagement. So let me know how we can help on that outreach plan. You know, we have a great power communications team that supports our HECI and Clean Power SF work. I'd be happy to offer them up to be of assistance. They have a lot of good connections with the community.
Okay. And Jeff, maybe if it's okay on this note, anything you wanted to add? Sorry, I see your hand is raised as well. And sorry, Jan, you too.
Yeah, I was just gonna offer that one of the invites I'd like to consider making is potentially to somebody that you all can help me figure out who it is. And that is somebody who can help us talk at a high level about some of the transmission issues that are rapidly evolving in California, whether that might be timelines for review or whether it might be interconnection issues or CAISO queue matters. And it might be more than one person, but I think that interrelated aspect of large projects is an enabling function that I'd like to have an expert come in and educate us and the folks who join us for the workshop as briefly as we can, but I think it's a good stage setting element of this. So I'd welcome suggestions about who we might invite along those lines to add flavor to the workshop.
Okay.
And Jan, I see your hands up.
Yes, thank you. And I'd also like to offer PCE's help in putting together the workshop, especially on the labor side, because a lot of our people here are interested in that. So I'm sending a note to Roy, our Power Resources Director, and Sean, who will be our incoming CEO, to make sure that they follow up so that we can help out and get others in that might be helpful for the workshop.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the general manager report? Okay, I'm not hearing any, so we'll go to our next item, which is item B, and it's approval of recommendations for the strategic action towards offshore wind.
So Vice Chair Mitchell, I'll speak and present this, but I want everybody to know I'm presenting on behalf of a team, including a lot of your staff who helped work through a pretty aggressively scheduled RFI exercise. And I'll talk about it, but ultimately where this is leading is there's a vote here on a proposed strategic plan that does lead down the path of running an RFO on offshore wind. I'll talk about some of the strategies we assessed and why we think this path makes sense. And I do hope there's a quite rich discussion because I view this as sort of a pretty important moment for CC Power and the CCAs to play a significant role in offshore wind. And that I think is going to be beneficial. And I want to make sure everybody's really comfortable with the strategy. So with that, let's go to the next slide, please, Amy. This was a great team effort. And one of my first projects here as the general manager, I really enjoyed working with the ad hoc committee, which was Central Coast with Rob Shaw, Peninsula with Jan, and Redwood Coast Energy Authority with Matthew. So thanks to you guys for serving on the ad hoc committee and both setting goals in the front end and then reviewing and sort of directing the strategy assessment at the end. And after I presented this, if the timing works, I'd welcome your guys sort of input before there's time for public comment so people really feel informed. The working group was from these three entities as well and was fantastic. So really thanks to the Central Coast, Peninsula, and Redwood Coast teams. It was really generous time and effort from everybody, and it was a fun project. And I feel like we really wrapped our head around a lot of the issues and got good information. So let me share about where we landed. Next slide, please. So again, this was an activity that started in February when the board directed this RFI. The purpose of the RFI was really to better understand offshore wind opportunities. And offshore wind is a naturally intriguing fit for CC Power. It's generally known to require a lot of offtake, so it's got to be big. It's very new, so it fits in this sort of area where the de-risking of joint procurement can be very valuable. And so you take those things together and you say, okay, maybe there's a good role for CC Power. What we did is the ad hoc committee was formed. In April, they reviewed the plan. We also posted a request for information in April. In May, we got the responses back. I'd say the response level was good, although, and it was very good in the sense that the parties that are looking to participate here are very skilled, very highly capitalized developers. So we saw some of the like really serious developers show up in our RFI and start to talk about their capabilities. I think that's one of the strengths we saw in this industry, or this new industry. We then embarked on a journey with a ton of interviews. We met with 4 of the leaseholders, another industry member. We talked to other states about how they're doing it, including New Jersey, where they've had their state play a central role. We met with the Department of Water Resources to understand what their potential roles might be. The California Energy Commission, which is doing not only some work related to compliance on a bill, but also road mapping offshore wind, and I think playing a really important convening role to get everyone talking and understanding what needs to happen when. We met with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which authorized the leases and is going to authorize more leases in the future. We met with the PUC to understand how this fits into integrated resource plans, and through them also the CAISO side, where we're trying to understand not only how much transmission is planned to be available, but how much incremental transmission could be available and by when. We talked to industry folks, including the American Clean Power Association. And then we're still trying to get a few more interviews in with the California Lands Commission, NYSERDA, and a group or a project, pilot project type project called CADEMO. So a pretty rich set of information was gathered, and everybody enjoyed, I think the interviews were very helpful of building trust, opening communications, really getting to the next level of understanding and insight. So it was really great. And we worked through that to June 7th with the ad hoc committee meeting, where we were really trying to land on recommendations for this board. And then now we are here with strategic recommendations. So I'll keep going and I'll tell you what the strategic recommendations are. Just so you understand the approach. Oh, I love that right box with the misfont. So we had some goals. We did an RFI. We got all that information. We kind of connected it with possible strategic actions, and we sorted those into these recommendations. So let me share about the recommendations. There's a couple findings I want everybody to know. So, and Amy, next slide, please. Offshore wind, definitely, when you look at it, many of you know this, but it looks very valuable. So it could be a homegrown industry here in California. It has potentially valuable non-correlation with solar hours. It could be big. It could provide a lot of 24/7 clean. And so it's naturally appealing, I think, especially for CCAs looking to build really clean, expansive portfolios. There's also roles for the load side and the off-taker here. CC Power or you can all play really important roles to work with industry and direct. And in the end, industry is one of their main messages is that, off-takers is one of the most important things for activating capital deployment on their side. So our role as potential buyers is critical to enabling activity here. And I think what this strategic plan does is it tries to balance a lot of benefits and costs and navigate a path forward. The challenges with offshore wind, unfortunately, is that it's not ready right now for major contracting. And this is California offshore wind. And the reason is that, generally when you talk to the developers, they don't yet fully understand and know what their costs are. And their costs are very unclear in a few ways. Supply chain, workforce, permitting, ports, and then technology maturity are all challenges. Transmission is also flagged as a challenge, but having spoken with the CAISO, there does appear to be plans and work underway to at least allow a healthy amount of offshore wind to be delivered. The question there, though, is timing. So as you build your portfolios, you need to know, will that transmission be in place in 2032 or 2035? And some of that work is not pinned down fully yet. But each one of these areas and barrier areas is a significant one. And I think normally for load serving entities like you, it's normal for you to enter into PPAs where there's risk. It's normal to absorb transmission costs. What makes some of this unusual is, what are the costs for activating an entirely new domestic manufacturing and supply chain in California? And how do you pick up some of those costs? How do you develop a whole new workforce that as of now is not trained and doesn't really exist? How comfortable are we with the ports plan coming together when there's a north port and a south port and other ports that all need to kind of work in concert at some point in the future? So those are some of the risk areas. And where we landed with the ad hoc committee was these are probably solvable. And there's a lot of emphasis from the state on trying to solve some of these problems. So looking at what our role could be, we landed on a recommendation plan that included several actions. And I generally think these are low risk actions. And we also want to focus on doing actions that de-risk things for our counterparties. And I'll talk about that. So to really help and then play a leadership role and get the benefits of offshore wind, a good opportunity would be to plan and signal to the industry that we would do a large RFO, but not right away. Instead, we would do it at a future expected date. The date for this is probably 2025 to 2027. And by delaying this RFO, but announcing it soon, the benefits are that we can tell everyone when we're going to do it, give them time to prep and plan, and then also work with the state and others to resolve some of these barrier areas so that by the time we run this RFO, we have a clarity and de-risked plans and private capital mobilized, and ultimately you get more competitive pricing. To do that, we get to the second point here, which is we would want to collaborate with industry. So there'll be a point where industry really is the counterparty, and we want to have competitive outcomes. We're not there yet. And I think right now, understanding industry side's views and what really activates their capital is really helpful. And also when we do structure contracts with them, we want to structure contracts where they don't feel that all of the risk is on them. We want to find ways to get, really cost-effective offshore wind. And so we want to try and have contract designs that accommodate that. Some strategies for that would be collaring or allowing off ramps if major infrastructure pieces are delayed, things like that. So collaboration will be a really important thing, and that may take the form of an NDA and talking, confidentially with these folks, or an MOU, or even a condition precedent structure to sort of clarify what we hope to achieve with this deal. I also think bigger would probably lower costs. So as we build up this plan, we can work with other CCAs or potential partners to try and expand the amount of offtake. And then lastly, we still want the option to look at some near-term pilots. This has to do with evaluating the technology and really test running some of this stuff. The challenge with the pilot is that it will take a long time anyway. And so we want to be careful that if we do a pilot and we invest in a, perhaps a higher priced pilot activity, what does that cost us? Is that worth it in the end? So we want the option to explore a pilot, but I'm not saying this is what we would do. We'd really just need to check it out. So all of this leads to the conclusion, and I want to have some discussion, please. But we want to do this suite of actions, and foremost among them is signaling a large RFO. And what you'll see on the next slide is a motion that says, let us flesh out this plan if you approve it, and we'll come back to you in a few months with a more fleshed out plan, and more specifically with a clearer sense of the timing and the megawatt numbers. And then also a plan to sort of really check in with industry so that they understand our earnest commitment here to doing a very serious RFO. And hopefully that will be enough to get them moving so that they're ready to offer us competitive pricing when the RFO is run. So on that note, Amy, can you just pop to the next slide so everybody sees it? So you guys have this in a motion 230605. And really what you're authorizing in that motion is the approval to take these strategic actions towards an offshore wind RFO. So not doing the RFO, but we felt like a vote was appropriate at this time, given the significance of what we're proposing and the possible scale of this RFO. And so we would take that authorization from you, build out the RFO scale and timing, engage with the developers, get a work team in place to ensure success. And a good example of this is that when you want to be serious with offshore wind, there's a lot of peripheral work that goes into it, including community benefits agreements, informing the port strategies, connecting with the fisheries, and all these various stakeholder groups that will have a say here. And then lastly, we want to continue to inform your integrated resource plans with this offshore wind. And what that does is that then feeds into the transmission plan and make sure the transmission shows up in a way that works with the timing of our planned RFO. So that's the motion you have in your packet, but I know we should have some discussion before that. So Vice Chair Mitchell, maybe I can go back to you. And if it's okay, I'd recommend we hear from the ad hoc committee heads first, given that they've sort of been in the guts of this work a lot and may have input. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry, Alec, did you want to go to the committee? They're not attending here first, right?
Well, sorry, the ad hoc committee members are. That was Jan, Matthew, and Rob Shaw, and Rob's not here, but just given their high level of engagement, I thought Jan or Matthew may want to elaborate on or follow my remarks in some way.
I see. Jan, Matthew?
I'll just follow it very briefly and say, I think Alex did a good job of summarizing, the discussions we had. So I don't think there's any like content to add, but just that reflected well where we landed as far as how to kind of move this forward.
Yeah, I would ditto that. And I think the next steps that he's laid out make a lot of sense for us to continue to be engaged and show that the CCAs are serious about offshore wind, and that we as a collective can contract for a significant amount, and therefore the state doesn't necessarily need to do it for us.
Any other? Jeff, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I think really appreciate the work of ad hoc and your work, Alex, on this. I think this is the right path, and I'd be happy to make a motion. I think my comment is that ordinarily, I wouldn't think of announcing a date, a couple of years off for an RFO, but I don't think this is an ordinary action. And I think I would like to continue driving California's progress toward decarbonizing that Redwood and Central Coast really launched for the state. And I think if we can help push in that direction, I think this is the right action to take. And I like the fact, as Jan pointed out, that it does get a little ahead of the argument that we're incapable of doing large scale procurement. So I'm all in, and I would even make a motion when the time's right.
Okay, Grish.
I want to thank the ad hoc committee members for working with Alex to pull this together. I think, like Jeff said, this is a unique technology, And for us to be leaning forward as CC Power makes sense. But we really don't have too much traction, right, from the other side, so to speak. So I think the recommendations that the ad hoc committee have put together are very strategic and allows Alex a lot of leeway to work with a variety of counterparties and start those conversations, whether it's with communities, transmission developers, CAISO, and of course the leaseholders. So really looking forward to seeing what you come back with, Alex, and also, yeah, how you utilize this kind of official kind of proclamation or something that we are interested in your discussions with stakeholders. So great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Mitch, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. And just like to echo what others have said about the effort that the ad hoc committee has put in here. I do want to ask a question though, and granted, we really haven't been sort of engaged in this at a super deep level, but I also think that this may set sort of a framework for not just offshore wind, but other types of resources that we may be pursuing going forward. I think that Alex points out that there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of hurdles that need to be gotten over for this particular resource. I want to make sure that we as CC Power continue to have a broad view and not be sort of technology captive to one particular technology as we go forward, and keep our thinking as broad as possible. So I support the recommendation that's in front of us, but I also want to make sure that we continue to think about other types of resources that may provide the same type of profiles that we're all looking for, but that may be at different points of maturity. So, but really appreciate the work, and we'll be supporting the motion if it's made.
All right, great. Matthew?
I was just going to add to what Jeff and also Grish said, that, you know, the technology, you know, in offshore wind, it's sort of a weird setup in the sense that, like, even just the process of a developer being able to move a project forward, it's like first they have to bid like, you know, $150 million just to get like site control to start doing their environmental studies, you know. So it's a very like backwards like investment process, you know, and we keep hearing from developers like, well, we need procurement, you know, to know that we're going to be able to move this forward. And it's like, well, they don't need procurement because they don't have anything to sell yet, you know. It's like they can't tell you when and how much and how, you know, what volume. And so it's more of, they need like market signals that like they're not wasting, you know, another $150 million on development costs if there's, you know, zero interest. And so, you know, I think trying to thread that needle of like, you know, understanding the sort of bind that they're in of like, all right, we already just put down $150 million. How do we now convince our bosses to invest the next $150 million? But also that they're in no position to actually respond to an RFO anytime soon. And so, you know, it is sort of it's an odd situation, not of our making, but I think, you know, Jeff and Grish sort of pointed that out well, as far as like, it's sort of the situation that needs to be addressed, even if it's not ideal.
Oh, sorry, thanks for that. Barbara?
Thank you. I also support the direction that's been recommended by Alex and the committee. Thank you for your time and effort on it. I think it's an important step for us to think about this as also sort of communicating how we do our work to people, right? And I think the important audiences that I haven't heard talked about, maybe it's buried in that bullet on community benefits, are the folks we're talking to for Build It Right. You know, the environmental justice, labor community needs to know that we're serious too, and that we're going to think about them as we go through a procurement process like this, such a major step.
All
Yeah.
right.
Vice Chair Mitchell, may I respond just a little bit?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, great point, Barb. So on that note, I think there is a lot of work to do in fleshing this RFO out, signaling to everyone, having opportunity for input. We're actually not even there yet. What I want to do is just come back and build up the numbers, because I think one of the first steps is to try and mobilize the private capital side to continue to invest. So as an example of how we might do that, we could informally poll everyone and sort of see if there's like a pre-commitment level that fits with your CCA's portfolio. I think a good example of this is Redwood Coast has included 40 megawatts of offshore wind, probably from the North Coast, Matthew, I'm guessing, in your IRP. And, so if we build from that and using that just as one data point, you can see that, with its load, Redwood Coast is sort of at least signaling for 40 megawatts. Some of you may have much bigger loads or different portfolio needs. And it's not unreasonable, given your size, that these numbers push well above 2000 megawatts. So that, and that type of earnesty from our side is hopefully enough to mobilize the other side. And if not, then, there's only so much we can do. I think what we'll have shown is that we were willing to buy in reasonable ways. We are committing or pre-committing to running RFO and trying to have a seat at the table to help, and also scaling appropriately. So meeting the needs and hearing industry. And I have talked with almost every leaseholder about this. So, generally they view this as a positive step and something that they can work with. Maybe not as good as us saying, for sure we'll buy at this price, but that's not how we do business. We obviously want to have a competitive solicitation. And so this is a second best option. And I think we really would see at scale what some of the pricing is and if it's competitive enough, and hopefully it will be. And as Matthew mentioned, a lot of these companies have already put forth, hundreds of millions of dollars. So they see opportunities and business cases here. And I think that's to our benefit. And we want to be able to work with them. So yeah, this was great feedback from everybody. I appreciate it. And again, the goal, if this motion passes, would be to come back to you in about 3 months, continue working with the staff and the ad hoc committee, and then have a more fleshed out RFO timeline and plan. And Director Hale, to your point, I think we can start to detail some of the critical caveats we want to predefine or pre-emphasize for stakeholders so they know what we're about when we finally run this solicitation. And I'm guessing this will be a pretty challenging solicitation. This will be a deal that, very few folks have struck ever, so it's pretty exciting also for the CCAs to be in such a neat role, looking at, really neat, massive technology with the opportunity to benefit California, especially if we get the manufacturing here.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Mitch, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple other quick questions here too. I'm intrigued also by the idea of a pilot program. I mean, I know today probably isn't the time to unpack that, but I'd be interested, Alex, in hearing a little bit more about that and about what kind of signal that might send. We've all got, I'm guessing we all have offshore wind in our IRPs to some degree or another. But it would be interesting to kind of see what sort of a pilot program might look like, and about whether or not that's something that we have the capability to play in that space, perhaps as one additional signal. And again, I realize that there's quite a bit that.
It's a great question. I can speak to that well, Mitch, because we looked at a bunch of different strategies. One was what we called the baby step strategy, which is really, hey, let's get a pilot. The pilot will serve various functions. It will be a test run for the permitting. The permitting is quite complicated. And on the federal areas, you have federal permitting plus state permitting, plus sort of substation on land permitting. You have that. And so maybe doing a pilot where you reduce some of that, maybe you just do a state waters pilot, could simplify it. Pilot also will probably be more expensive. The dollars you spend may not lead to domestic supply chain build out. Instead, the things may be sourced from Asia or elsewhere. So you wouldn't be getting the return on investment in some ways, but maybe that's prudent because you're field testing it, right? You're really using it as a sort of way to test out the technology and understand it before you commit big. In the end, what I found persuasive was that the timing of the pilots would be such that it may be not that beneficial because you may not get it done soon. The pilot might still take until late in the 2020s to get any results. And if we wait to do our RFO until say 2030, there may be risks that we face. I think a better strategy is we want to look at pilots in case there's compelling offers, and the motion does allow that. Yet at the same time, we want to still work towards signaling the activation of that private capital through our willingness to participate in RFO, and sooner than that. We think that's kind of the best combination of strategies. And also in the RFO, let's say we get numbers that show, hey, there's still too much risk embedded in these contracts. We're not sure if people are really trying to scale this to give us their best competitive pricing, then that would be a decision we would have to wrestle with at that time. But it's still good, useful information, I think, for all of us, including the state.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thanks, Alex. And I sort of assumed that was the case. I mean, clearly we would be looking at this as sort of a proof of concept type exercise. Again, I don't want to get too deep into it today, but a pilot sort of done concurrently with some of the other work that's going on right now, to your point that it wouldn't necessarily build sort of a local supply, or not local, but a national supply chain sort of process here in the US, but kind of curious about what that might look like. The other thing, just real quickly and speak to it as best you can, I guess, but I mean, we're not the only ones having these conversations, I presume. What can you tell us about other conversations that we may be aware of that are sort of heading in this same direction? Who else is having these types of conversations with the developers and others, if anyone?
Yeah, do you mean in California or outside of California?
Yeah, no, here in California specifically, yeah.
Yeah, so many of you know, I think one of the overlap areas here is the state also looking to have a central procurement entity that may be in a position to do this? And if that is set up, would they in fact want CC Power or some other entities do it, or would they do it themselves? One candidate organization for that is the Department of Water Resources. And I did meet with one of their key staffers on this. I think the policy is not set, so she wasn't in a position to really sort of say exactly what things would look like. But I can say, I think a lot of the work she would do is similar to what we've done, which is that, you say, okay, well, how do we do this? Is it prudent to just say, give me the price you have today, which is full of risk and unknowns? Or is there a different strategy where you try to de-risk it and start to get competitive outcomes while helping the industry scale? So I think what we're proposing here does some of that. And what we're proposing here is also informed by some of the similar central procurement work done on the East Coast, where we've spoken with them. And some of the key states there are New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and the developers are all active, in some of those areas. So they have opinions on what works, what doesn't work. And, really there's a ton of problems here. So a good example would be, well, one state may have done a great job of creating port space. That's good. We can learn from that. Another state may have done a really good job of having low price contracts, but if those contracts were too inflexible, and this is actually in the news now, some of the contracts get underwater and the projects may struggle. Another state may have done a really great job of figuring out how to do state permitting and getting the gen ties to land and plugged into the grid. But then you need the developers to work in a coordinated fashion, so you're not paying for multiple gen ties unless you need to. So there's a million lessons to learn from each one of those entities, and that's why we've been trying to speak to them. And my hope is that we could factor all of those presumed best practices into our future RFO in ways that benefit California. And I also just think California is still just complicated because of our size. And there's north-south issues, there's uncertainty with the ports. And I think the state still hasn't figured out exactly what its roadmap is. So it's leaving everyone uncertain. And that's where we can step in and try to help.
Great, thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm happy to talk to you more if helpful, Mitch.
Okay, so let's go to public comment on this item and then we'll come back to the board and hopefully there's a motion and we can vote. Any members of the public that wanted to comment on this item can raise your hand. I'm not seeing any, so we'll come back to the board. Is there any director that would like to make a motion?
I'd motion that we approve the staff and ad hoc recommendation.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. Okay, Brittany, I think we're ready to vote.
Perfect. For resolution 230605, Central Coast Community Energy, absent. Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy, also absent. Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Yeah,
Thank you. The resolution passes.
Okay, great. So we are on to item C, the Inflation Reduction Act assessment. And Alex, do you want to lead us through this discussion?
Sure. So this will be a little faster and less in depth, but also exciting. Inflation Reduction Act, was one of those transformative bills, and we want to see what's in it for us. It sounds like some of you guys have already started this work, but CC Power may also be in a position to do that and ultimately come forward with specific recommendations for activities we can undertake that will be valuable. So what this is just sort of a run through of a quick basic plan. And I just want everyone to know this work's going to be happening pretty aggressively over the next 2 to 3 months. So Amy, next slide. And then, I welcome reactions. So in the end, Inflation Reduction Act is a big deal. There's a bunch of stuff. So we want to try and distill it all into one or more strategic actions, potentially including RFOs. And the RFOs may also look at ownership opportunities through the direct pay provision. So we know there's a lot here that's relevant to clean energy, and we want to work aggressively to vet and identify several possible strategic actions that ultimately would be presented forth as deal flow opportunities. Given the vast subject matter here, we are bringing in some legal expertise and support to help us, and really working with some of the best to ask precise questions and get very explicit answers so we know exactly what we're doing. And then wanted to work also with team members from your organizations, and the initial sub-team I have is San Jose, PCE, and VCE. I think this is valuable because I like to have at least 2 or more participating CCAs participate, so we have a diversity of opinions. And it also helps if the CCAs are kind of differently sized, so I make sure we consider everybody's needs. Some of the, this is really brief, but some of the scope items to cover are: where might ownership make sense? For what technology or generation types should CC Power solicit? And what is the sequence of actions or procurements that we should take? The time frame is to start already, which some of the work is being done, researching the IRA, get into August where we'll start to really look at the strategic options, and then have recommendations back to this audience, and also having vetted them with the resource planning working group in September. And that time frame again is, I hope, hopefully is aggressive, so that if we want to take action, we have opportunities to do it soon. So this is a quick overview of that project. And again, I think there's many ideas for what should go into the consideration section there, and what the specific outcomes or goals we want are. I've heard from different organizations on the technology types that may be interested, but ultimately we're looking for stuff that saves money or reduces risks or augments your portfolio, and then doing it in a way that's smart. So we'll try to distill all that for you, so you all are in a good position to evaluate it. And then if we do move forward, again, everything's cafeteria menu style. Some organizations may opt in and some may opt out. And that would be the ultimate outcome here. So Vice Chair Mitchell, that's the quick summary here. And, I'm excited about this. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. So I'd welcome a chance to dialogue with anyone on it.
Great. Any discussion on this item? Questions? I'm not seeing any. I will say, Alex, I'm very supportive of this. I think this is going to be, really great, especially looking at the ownership model, given some of the things we're seeing in the industry right now. So really glad you're working on it from my perspective. Any other discussion for board members before we go to public comment? I know there's one.
Yeah, Lori, if I may. Yeah, really excited about this, Alex. I think just the IRA ability to leverage public financing, etc., just has that. This could be a giant opportunity for us, not just with utility scale renewables, but also other opportunities on the program side. So yeah, just looking forward to what structures you bring back and what opportunities. And I like what you said about this may be cafeteria style, so there may be different opportunities that are identified that would serve subsets of CC Power members. So, and thanks for your initiative and getting some expert legal counsel to distill some of the complexity we have in the IRA.
Yeah, no, thanks, Girish. I'm really excited to dive deep into this and come forth with some options. I mean, the sky's the limit here, right? So it's really wild. There's heat pump water heater programs or owning new power plants, sort of really wide spectrum of opportunities. And then the direct pay provisions are, really important, because even if you pursue tax equity, as many of you know, there's usually a middle party involved in that. So it's pretty special to be able to get the direct pay percentages that are available through the bill. And I think that's going to make this really compelling. The challenge is what's available to buy if we want it, right? But we'll see. So all of this will come back to you. And, I just want to also emphasize any team members are welcome. I will socialize this through the resource planning working group. So those are the right folks to evaluate and inform me. But if you do have your team specifically, you want them involved, just let me know.
Jan, I see your hands up.
Yeah, we're really excited about this work, Alex. And just to let others know, we are embarking on using the direct pay provision for some local solar projects that we're doing for our member agencies. We're doing about 1.7 megawatts of rooftop and carport solar, and plan to use the direct pay to get the 30% ITC back.
All right. Tell us how it goes, Jan. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, any other discussion on this item? I'll just say, obviously I'm very supportive. I also think, the ownership model is exciting just to bring new resources on, but I also think there's potential opportunity with some of the new regulatory requirements with Slice a Day. So excited to, learn more there. Okay, so we'll go to public comment, and I see we have one hand up there. Okay, Drew.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. My name is Drew Wong. I work for Quino Energy, which is a small or young energy storage startup that's based in San Leandro. And I just wanted to ask a question, particularly about the generation and technology types that are being assessed. Is this going to be the same across CC Power that it is for the different CCAs uniquely, or is it going to be something that is going to be drafted from one or multiples of the CCAs? I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about how new technologies are evaluated in the IRA and in procurements in general for CCP. Thank you.
Lori, would you like me to respond?
You can. Typically, public comment is to provide comment to the board, Drew. You know, typically it's not to answer those types of questions, but you know, Alex, if you want to indulge it,
I apologize. I've never done this before.
Yeah, no problem.
So thank you.
Hey, Drew, thanks for being here and participating. Appreciate it. I'm very happy to hear of your interest specifically on the Inflation Reduction Act. So CC Power already has long duration storage. There's a good chance that CC Power on behalf of its members does more procurement, in which case the best way for you to be aware of it is to sign up for the procurement notices through the website. If you ever are interested to talk, you can also email info@coccommunitypower.org and we'll get back to you to help explain our processes. I think to your question, CC Power is a little different in that, you know, we do joint action. So the individual CCAs may be broad or specific in their solicitations, and that doesn't necessarily define what CC Power is going to do. And likewise, CC Power may be broad or specific, and it may look very different than what the CCAs do. So unfortunately, it's complicated, and there's no easy one answer response. But thank you for your question.
Yeah, agree. Thanks for the participation and being here. Okay, so any more discussion on item C here? That was not an action item, so we do not need to take a vote, but any other comments on this before we move on? Not seeing any. Okay, so our last two items. So item D is thanking Jan Pepper for all of her service here on the board. And I've had the pleasure to thank you twice, Jan, so I feel pretty lucky. Really, you know, I can't say enough about what you've contributed to the CCA model. You know, PCE, as I've said before, is such a model of success, and really appreciate all your leadership there and on this board and Cal CCA and so many other areas where you've really led the way. And I can tell you, certainly here at San Jose, we've benefited from all of your knowledge and expertise. So thank you and good luck in the next phase of your journey. Certainly wish you all the best. Alex, is there anything you wanted to say before? I'm sure there's many other directors that would.
I'll defer to you guys first. Of course, I'm thankful for you, Jan. I've known you for a while, so thank you. And I wish you the best in retirement. But don't go too far. You know, we still may have questions.
Any other directors want to say a few words? Yeah, Grish.
Jan, all the best on your new adventure. We know each other for quite a while. Not sure if I should take credit to introducing you to Public Power. We worked together in the city of Alameda, and then Jan moved on to work for the city of Santa Clara, and then her current gig as the founding CEO of PCE. And you've done a lot of great work. Thank you also for all your support when we were putting together this JPA. You had your thumbs up. Yep, we should start this. And so I think having that critical mass super early and that support and encouragement was very useful in the forming of CC Power. So thank you for that. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you very shortly. And please do keep in touch.
Thanks, Chris. Jeff.
Jan, I want to thank you too. I was reflecting back on how when we had all of our, you know, kind of first in California electric vehicle programs, we thought we were kind of hot stuff and we're kind of strutting around the state. And then you and your team very expertly showed us how it was done and one-upped us. And it was beautiful because I think you kind of brought to the industry the best kind of competition which is like a super collaborative kind, that for us to think about how to just be better ourselves. And so I appreciate that. You helped move that industry. Thank you.
Barbara, yeah. I think you're on mute, Barb. Yep.
I lowered my hand, but I didn't open my mouth. So sorry about that. Thank you, Jan, for all your work. Everything that everybody else said, plus I want to recognize that part of your leadership style is to invite your staff to get involved too. And I think you really showed a lot of leadership and support by giving them the freedom to engage with all of us too. And so I would just draw that piece of your leadership out from all the other compliments that you've heard that I want to amplify, but not repeat. So thank you. Congratulations and good luck on what's next.
Right. Anyone else want to say a few words? Jan, I'm sure you have any parting advice for us as you go on to your next phase.
Well, it's really been a pleasure working with all of you, and I hope that we continue to cross paths. And, you know, being in the CCA space is just so amazing because we all work together and support each other. And I don't think there's, you know, in my career, there hasn't been this kind of, I don't know, good feeling all the time. Like we're not competitive. We're like, whatever, if someone does something cool, it's like, oh, I want to do that too. How did you do that? And just boosting each other up. And that's been really great. Being here has been really fun for me at PCE because I love startups, I love renewable energy, I love public power. And so being able to do this at Peninsula has been really fun. And now that we're 40 people, you know, the really fun part for me has gone by. And I'm just looking forward to continuing to stay engaged. I have a small consulting contract to be here for Sean Marshall, who's taking over, to help her out. And, you know, I may help our resources team with some of the work we're doing here at CC Power, but hopefully not too much. But I've got a couple little grandkids I want to play with. Planning to work on a book about energy and travel, sleep, exercise, you know, all the stuff that is hard to do when you're working 40+ hours a week. So thank all of you for everything you've done to help us here at PCE and to help me. It's been great. So I wish all of you the best as well, and much success to everyone, to this organization as we go forward.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Jan. You built something. You should feel very proud. You know, that's pretty neat.
It's been fun.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Brittany, maybe you can help me out. This isn't an action item, right?
It is.
It
actually.
is. Can I move for the
Voting.
adoption?
We're voting. All
Yes.
right, so we'll go to public comment. I'm not seeing any on the public comment, so I will come back to the board and you all can race to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Great.
I'll second it.
Great. Barbara. Ready to vote.
Okay, for resolution 230606, commending and thanking Jan Pepper. Central Coast Community Energy, absent. Clean Power SF.
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy, absent. Peninsula Clean Energy.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do on this.
Commend yourself. Yeah.
Sure, yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority.
Yes.
San Jose Clean Energy.
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Resounding yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority.
Yes.
Valley Clean Energy.
Maybe, yes, resounding yes.
The resolution passes.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for all of the leadership and definitely all the best. Sounds fun. Okay, so to our next item is thanking Tim for all of your leadership and support of CC Power over the years. And I know, Tim, I think, you've really contributed to getting this organization off the ground, which is no small feat. So really want to thank you for your leadership during some, pretty trying years when, it's a very brand new organization. So appreciate all of your hard work here. And yeah, you can't be commended enough for, getting those 2 projects over the finish line, really demonstrating how this can be successful. So thank you so much for your leadership. And I'll open it up to the board. Anyone else want to make a few comments? Yeah, Garish.
Tim, thank you very much. I've known Tim for many years. Our paths have crossed when we both worked for Public Power and also did a bunch of work at CMUA. So very impressed with Tim's work over the years and how he has a really broad view of our industry. He helped DWR and the governor's office through the energy crisis. So he's really been a contributor to our industry for a long time. And Tim, thank you very much for taking up this position. It was a startup on a shoestring budget, and you did some tremendous things, right? You were at the helm of CC Power when we issued that first RFP for long duration storage for 500 megawatts before the mandate came in place. So you shepherded that through the 2 contracts we had for long duration storage and the 2 contracts for firm clean resources. So now that you've got that all, done, you can get Alex to do all the implementation work. But you put this together, so fantastic, like a true executive. Yeah, and I think just you as a person and you're just phenomenal. I think, yeah, I found it a pleasure to work with you. And thank you for bringing us here. Your 2 years here has been great. And you're leaving this organization in a better place than when you started, which is all we can hope for. So thank you, and hoping to continue to meet with you on the outside in a different conference room that may have 18 different rooms. Okay, back to you.
All right. Thanks, Garish. Jan.
I just also wanted to thank Tim for the great work that you did for us here and all that you accomplished. I mean, as Garish just went through that for 4 PPAs that we got signed amongst and hurting all of us cats to make that happen. So thank you for that. And, I enjoyed all the conversations we had along the way, and wish you the best as well. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Just want to lend my voice to the others. You had the tough task of breaking trail for us, right? Doing those first contracts, I think, is the hardest part, really, when folks don't have the practices and the norms established yet. And you helped us develop those. Such a contributor prior to joining the CC Power role, such a contributor. And the way I saw you was in your role with the governor's office during the energy crisis. Those were some other challenging times. So I'm sure you're going to have other challenges in your future, and you'll be up for those too. Thank you for your contributions here.
Well, I don't hear anybody else. I know Alex has something special for Tim, so I'll turn it over to you, Alex.
Yeah, and Tim, I wanted to say on a personal note, thank you so much. I mean, it's great to come in as the GM and to have a chance to work with the interim GM and be so graciously and warmly welcomed and trained up. So I really appreciate you staying on these last couple months and helping and safety netting and answering my many phone calls and questions to help me be successful. So I did want to share for everybody that Tim has continued to work hard to ensure the organization's success, albeit through me, more so lately. And Tim, I really appreciate it. And I'll always remember and respect how you've carried yourself in this time to help the organization. So thank you. And I appreciated the chance to learn from you. But Tim, you're not getting out of here without something special. So we wanted to share something you'll probably put on your wall and on your mantelpiece. And Amy, if you're in a position to share it, Tim, even as we speak, this has been made and will be delivered to you somehow. I don't know how, but we'll get it to you. And it's a plaque on behalf of everyone that thanks you and recognizes you for your contributions, and shows all the pretty significant territories you got to work with. I mean, CC Power is big. And so it's really neat to see how you may have helped directly or indirectly people from all this area of California. So thank you very much. And I look forward to taking you out to lunch tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Tim, is there anything you'd like to?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to reflect on this. I'm moved, and I'll look back on this opportunity very fondly for things that you described here today. I want to say that I so appreciate the support that I've received from Chairs Balachandra and Cyphers, from the board members who participated in the ad hoc committees, from the board members and the staff that you brought in. That support made the challenges that we had in front of us and me manageable. I want to thank the Braun Blazing and Wind team. Without their due diligence and personal service, I couldn't have survived. And I think at the same time, they were helpful. It's clear that they were helpful in being able to keep us out of harm's way as we were, plodding through serial number one on everything that we were accomplishing. I appreciate the opportunity to have been involved in, Alex's transition into the role that he's filling for you now, and just the material that you went over today in regard to the support that you're building within the organization for future efforts, the strategic views that are going to be taken with the offshore wind. Those capture the essence of the 3-year strategic plan that you all helped give shape to, aligning your interests, but positioning the organization and the membership for the myriad of challenges that you have in front of you. And I think that you've traded up with Alex, and I believe that he are going to be up to the challenges that you have in front of you in being able to continue to progress in the initiatives that you have underway. So as I said, I'll look back on these times very fondly, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have helped where I can. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tim. Okay, so we'll go to the public. Any public comment on this item? If you want to raise your hand. I'm not seeing any, so I think we can come back to the board, and I am sure we will have a motion and a second. So Garish,
I'll move.
right, and then Barbara.
Second.
Great. All right, I think we're ready to take a vote.
Okay, perfect. For resolution 230607, commending and thanking Tim Haynes. Central Coast Community Energy, absent. Clean Power SF,
Yes.
East Bay Community Energy, Absent. Peninsula Clean Energy,
Yes.
Redwood Coast Energy Authority,
Yep.
San Jose Clean Energy,
Yes.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy,
Yes.
Sonoma Clean Power Authority,
Yes.
and Valley Clean Energy.
Again, a resounding yes.
Thank you. The resolution passes.
All right, great. So now we are on to item 7, which is discussion of any individual member items. Anybody have any items not on the agenda they'd like to discuss? All right, I'm not hearing any, so then there's Barb.
Sorry, too short, not fast enough with the hand. Sorry, Lori. Just wanted to let folks know that we have a commission business meeting coming up where we will take up renewal of our authority to pay our fees here. Just the admin, not the project costs. Those are already good to go. And that will have be receiving some policy direction from our commission, anticipate receiving some policy direction from our commission on interactions with CC Power leading up to the Build It Right workshop. When those materials are public, I will share them out so that you'll be sure to see them. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Barb. Any other individual member items? Okay, then we're on to item 8, adjournment. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great.
All right.